Great. Thanks, Garth. And nice to see you all today on this beautiful sunny day. Thanks for not playing hooky. So Garth covered some of this. This is my 13th year at RIT, starting out with 5 that grew to 13. So I think this place has that kind of effect on us. And I kind of have like a third in my career, a third in academia, a third working for big corporations, and a third in my own businesses, which kind of means I'm an old guy and I'm getting near the end of my career. So everything's got to count now. But last 13 years, 10 was over in College of Art and Design. And I was one of the gals there, the folks that teach technology to artists, you know, and help artists understand, well, how do we leverage technology, and even down to the coding level. As we know, it's infiltrated so much. So, you know, it was really natural for me to come over to our department and pick up the immersion, because I'm teaching non-majors, computer science. And I'm also now working, of course, with the medical folks, teaching clinicians about coding and about, you know, informatics. So as Garth mentioned, my research typically on campus anyway, I'm talking about innovation, immersive discovery, develop frameworks for measuring the before and after effective technology, and primarily in telehealth areas. And now I'm kind of expanding that into older and underserved populations, working on some new potential grant there. So the story for this today is, you know, how do we advance programs? As I walked in to this program, it was, you know, fairly rough shape in terms of 3-4, you know, students enrolled each year, a bit anemic. What can we do? I think all of us in the technology space would realize that firsthand as we live it, that we're in this digital revolution and data revolution. Everything that we know has changed. Even in the midst of my career, working heavily in print and digital print, it's completely changed to where print was under siege. And at a point where companies were blowing up left and right, the largest number of print-related companies, you know, filing for bankruptcy was in the last 10 years. Went from, you know, 50,000 establishments across the country down to maybe half of that. The print school at RIT used to be the biggest school, one of the highly decorated, endowed schools, which it drifted all the way down to very small enrollments. So this is kind of the scenario we're living. These changing times, I would think, logically require changing techniques, right? If things are changing more, you know, dynamically, faster and so forth, how do we address that? How do we move at that speed? And picture's worth 1,000 words, so let's go there. This is the coronation of Pope Benedict, 2005. Notice our little lowly clamshell in the lower right corner. Let's advance forward to Pope Francis' coronation, 2013. You know, it really puts a cap on what I'm trying to say with respect to the digital revolution, right? And the data revolution. I always wonder, well, where are all these images going? How are they being stored? Where's the metadata for them? How are they retrieving them? And I often in an audience, I'll ask how many people actually have their images backed up, which is very few. And they're very, yeah, of course you would. But we don't necessarily have them archived in a way that we're able to use them to the extent that we want to. So these changing times are requiring us really to look at the whole technology, social, economic, geographic scenarios associated with higher ed and see, well, how do we meet people where they are or on the trajectory of where they're going to be, right? So we got to look at the problem hopefully differently. And these traditional marketing approaches, you know, to connect with students don't work anymore. You know, how many of our students are really interested in print? And maybe they're interested in print that's somehow linked to augmented reality, and they're able to sort of experience more than just one media source at a time. And so for today's discussion, we're going to try to address some of these questions. How do we determine the educational needs of students in this whole life cycle from matriculation to alumni? We're interested in the whole cycle. What's a repeatable marketing process? Are we one and done? Are we going to do a website and then that's good, or is there more to it? I think there should be more anyway. Are there unique delivery mechanisms that allow us to deliver programs in unique ways commensurate with the changing times? And what are the unique brand needs of some of these programs in this sort of cross-media environment that we're working in? So we got to start somewhere, right? You have to start with innovation. And anyone want to take a shot at what's innovation to you? Any thoughts? New ideas? Yeah. Yeah, very good. So both. Oh, you had it as well.
No, I was gonna say what Steve said. He said it better than I did.
Yeah, but it's excellent because sometime overlooked. And I go to my source, Clayton Christensen, Harvard Business School, who wrote this great book called The Innovator's Dilemma. And he characterizes innovation really in these two major threads, right? One is what's incremental innovation, the kinds of things that increase quality, time, perceived ease of use, perceived usefulness, right? That's important. And then we also look at the disruptive or breakthrough innovation, new technology solving a problem that we kind of didn't realize we had, right? So how do we look at this? Well, an incremental innovation, we're really looking at how do we advance to the next level? And a most simple example is your next version of your smartphone. The paradigm of the smartphone has been done and played out, right? And now we're doing product derivatives that are really just the same idea, but with some incrementality that makes you upgrade or wants you to upgrade. The game is that most people don't upgrade because there's switching costs associated with that, right? They'll wait maybe one or two versions. For me, it's like 2 or 3 now to really get the benefit. But you look at the advertisements of what people are really selling in incrementality, it's really just the next thing, okay? And maybe a little better mousetrap. When we talk about disruptive innovation, we're really talking about a new paradigm, a way to look at something that we haven't looked at before. One thing that comes to mind, my watch, is this transformation from the traditional timepiece to the computer on our arm, right? It changed the way we think of a watch. We don't think of a watch the same anymore. We think of a watch as our companion in computing for many things. I even personally am a big golfer. I have a Garmin GPS. Great business. I was so excited about that. 2 years later, it's sitting on the shelf because I can download an app and I'm good to go and it's right integrated here. So I want you to get the difference between those two, at least is the way I'm trying to characterize it for this talk, and realize that there's many things that we work with today. Celia's whole domain in artificial intelligence, these are disruptive, right? Because we're using some techniques that are new, but we're applying them in ways that are also so innovative that we're trying to figure out even how to harness it in the long run. And Bruce, you're working on similar stuff. So that's just a small list there. But when we talk about higher ed programs, what we really want to do is have this incremental innovation mindset. So it's a little risky to go into higher ed in program-related growth and think, hey, I'm going to do something disruptive and revolutionize the way we launch and take a program forward. Typically, it's small pieces and we increment, but we stay steady. And that's kind of the theme or the takeaway of where we're headed today, is you stay within incremental innovation, but you do it in a little bit more in a platform approach. So it begins with immersive discovery. We'll talk about that. How do we get inside the needs of the customer. Who is the customer? We look at life cycle roadmap of our constituency. We try to establish a platform so that it's reoccurring. So we're not one and done, and we can do this year in, year out, and hopefully measure what gets planned, gets done, so to speak, and project planning. Some of this work comes from, this is now almost 10 years ago. I was asked to do a keynote at the American Magazine Publishers Association in New York City, and they were having membership problems. You know, as you know, print under siege, magazine subscriptions going down. How do we respond to that? And so some of this material was gained from there, and also gave a keynote for Xerox, a thought leadership workshop where they brought in 50 top universities across the country, the marketing CMOs, and kind of wanted to hear how they should approach technology in terms of the future. And I'm on the board of a local company called Cause and Effect Strategy, which is a data strategy services company. And we've served Brown Mackie College and Canisius College out of Boston, out of Buffalo, using some of the techniques that I'm sharing with you today. So they've been somewhat vetted. So let's dig into this a little bit. So some foundational thoughts here is that when we're driving a new strategy in a program, we want to start with purpose. What's the main, purpose for the program? Why is this program here? And sort of what's in it for all the constituents, not only the college, the university, the students, and so forth. Then purpose drives strategy, and strategy drives brand. And so this is sort of the process that we need to think of when we're moving down the path of transformation. This is a book I wrote with two other industry folks. It's a RIT Press book, and this is actually the textbook for a course that's still running in the master's program in College of Art and Design called Implementing Media Business Change. Many of our RIT students get placed in agencies, and they're hiring our sort of critical thinkers to come into their operation and help them transform to sort of this whole new media platform. How do they go about doing that? And so we launched this book. I can pass that around, take a peek. Like, some of the material is from that book, but what we did is we developed a diagnostic tool that we would go into companies, and they would fill out a questionnaire, and they would rate their progress and transformation as a company on these 9 vectors, and it would score, and invariably it will return a wheel that was not round. And so the title of the book was Unsquaring Your Wheel, making it round. How do I make sure that in all these vectors in my company that I'm actually transforming in unison across each vector, and we're beginning to roll in harmony versus having one really sharp edge that doesn't roll. And so this actually went really well. We not only were able to develop a new master's program in media arts and technology that's running now, but we also took this out to the field, and we helped hundreds and hundreds of companies go through the transformation process utilizing these techniques. So we're pulling this in a little bit for today. This is actually an excerpt from the article that was published in the American Magazine Publishers Association. So moving along, if we say purpose is important, well, in high generalities, the purpose is really to create a customer. And I guess when we're thinking in the heavy marketing discussion today, Tyler's domain is we're thinking, who's our customer, right? And if the purpose is to not only create the customer, this is a little latency, we want to also figure out how do we keep them, right? Retention. And so that requires a strategy. Well, the strategy is really just a diagnosis of the situation. And then we go a step further and say, okay, we know what the situation is. What's the treatment? And then the third component is what's the action plan? And how do we put that action plan to life in a way that you could actually carry it out while, like many of us, doing 4 or 5 other jobs, right? You've got to be, a researcher, a publisher, a speaker, a cheerleader, a counselor, a teacher, a new content developer, and at the same time, market and run a program. So since my study is always in workflow optimization, I'm always looking for how can I do something and gain traction and repeat it so that I, don't have to reinvent this every year. So, it's mainly figuring a way to survive. And so the brand components is a key point here, is that whether we like it or not, we have a brand, and we're either known or unknown. The top of the scale, creme de la creme, is known for things that I, the customer, care about. At the bottom is unknown. And again, when we walked into the health informatics program, you'll see later when I do, kind of the analysis for you on what we walked into, we really had no brand in health informatics. And so we had to figure out how to do that. So brands are basically not about products or services, they're about people. And they're also associated with customers, not company. So just sort of changing our speak a bit. So we might ask, well, what business are we in? Are we in the higher ed business? I guess I'm kind of arguing, or at least hopefully making a reasonable case, that we're not in that business. We're really in the community business. So when I started looking at this through a different set of lens, I thought, well, what is a community? Well, we start off that we know that our customer, our primary customer, is the student. Student has to have a fun experience. They need it to fit with what their needs are, with their finances, with the return on investment, their career. Are they going to be able to get the job that they need coming out? But again, this was the somewhat myopic view of how higher ed would run programs and roll programs out. But when you look further, this is the community. It's a lot more. It's parents, alum, events, programs, schools, colleges, the institute itself, and the industry. And when we take this broader look at all of these items, we start to think a little more holistically. Well, what are the value proposition and needs of the different individuals in the community? It's a different view, and also a little more challenging. So I looked at the work from Bernier and Lee, and they studied communities, and they carved communities really into 3 areas: pools, which are these loose associations between individuals, and a pool is really something that you might think of in a political party, a user group, and of course us, higher ed. So that sits right with what we maybe aspire to be and do here. There's also hubs in communities where it's a celebrity fan club, one focal individual branching out to all the constituencies. And these folks don't necessarily have a relationship together. They have a relationship to that lead individual. And the last one is webs. So a strong one-to-one relationship in that social network. And that might be a medical support group, people, cancer survivors. This falls right in line with our alumni perspective, that students becoming alums, staying connected. And we do a lot of things like that that help that at RIT with Imagine RIT and some of the other Brick City Week that brings alums back into play here. But I have a question rhetorically somewhat, is what are we doing in our programs to specifically do that? Initially, when I did some of the research with our alums in the health informatics program, they told me that no one had ever contacted them regarding anything of the program ever. Wow. I'm like, what? So it was a big pill to swallow. So what are some of these best practices in communities? Well, communication, right? We find ways to communicate, which sort of develops this value of the pool. You make sure that there's a way that they can interact. So you want to set up these forums in ways that students can not only, or alums or prospects, can hear the story, but they could also vet it with each other, right? And the last one here is we want to be responsive to the issues of the community. To be, authentic and transparent is people in the community should be able to voice issues, and we should be able to vet them and, and figure ways creatively how to solve those problems. So my pitch here had been a little bit architecturally that we really need to form a platform so that we can, handle these tough problems, learn from mistakes as we go, and leverage what is strong year to year reoccurring. And so we start with really understanding the life cycle needs of the community, of the customer. And we look at what type of content, promotion, and participation those individuals need at each juncture in their life cycle. We also try to figure how do we integrate the educational experience so that it's a little bit more easy to navigate and feels, we'll say, something that's maybe compelling for them to be involved in. And we also noted that we have to adjust as we go. We've all been a victim, I would say, of direct marketing, and we used to call it junk mail, right? Comes to your house and, it's like, how did they get my information on this? And in the business, I was a CTO of one of the largest direct marketing companies in the country, and we called it dwell time. When you got a piece, how long would you dwell on that piece before you threw it in the trash? The interesting thing is one of the greatest dwell times were your bills and statements. And so we were at times advising companies to use bills and statements as the piggyback to bring other messaging, because people would dwell on the bill and statement and you could piggyback in other pieces. So, when we think about this direct marketing approach, if we don't know life cycle, it's difficult to resonate with people. So if I'm a newbie in my life cycle, let's say I'm still at the acquisition stage where I haven't made a commitment. I'm looking at universities and I'm looking at programs, and you send me a general message that's tailored to someone who's already sold on the program, you might lose me. Same case is if I'm already in the program and you're not sending me the type of information, message, and so forth that helps me where I'm at to move to the next level, I'm feeling like you don't know me. I'm feeling like you have all this information about me. I filled out all this. You're working with me. I'm writing checks to you in this program, and you don't know that I'm a second year. And why would you be giving me, year one offers or year one requests to participate? So this points directly that the only way you can solve this dilemma is by database management, database communications, and tying it to really knowing the profile of the individual at that time. And this is why the pitch is there somewhat, and I've done it in other programs, and I'm working on doing it here. It takes years, to be data driven. What are some of the objectives of this health informatics program? Well, we just wanted to, from the student and the alumnus perspective, delight them. Give them a delightful experience that's, as frictionless as possible, establish pride in the program and a sense of belonging to this community. There should be some value in that. We wanted to figure out what are their unmet needs and wants and provide some type of emotional connection. At the program level, and I know my boss likes to hear this kind of thing, and my boss's boss, is how do we provide this sustained competitive advantage? How do we make certain that we attract good people and we have increased enrollments? Because when that engine is running well, everybody does fine. we're a healthy environment. So how do we get through this process? Well, the first thing we did was develop the life cycle roadmap. In marketing terms, they call it a journey map. And HCC, HCI, there's other terms for it, which I'll share in a sec. But it's mainly, doing this immersive discovery in the domain, and also doing the same thing as it relates to curriculum and marketing messaging simultaneously. They both are intertwined. They both need, that type of investigation. And then we develop a plan, a realistic plan, that ties with the budget we have. One of the challenges I had in this program is that I had no money, very little. So just a little bit of table scraps that I could get every year here and there. So I have to move the needle, but with very little budget. It's quite a challenge. So the first step in developing this, this life cycle roadmap is really looking at two tightly coupled variables, right? The first thing is, what's the profile of the people in the community at each step? Okay, pretty straightforward. And the second one is, what do they need in terms of communications? What do they need to know about? What are there motivators that extrinsic, intrinsic, that we could work with them on? What's their need cooperatively in a community? Do they need to share information? Do they want to share information? Are we facilitating that? Okay, so in my my master's work here at RIT, Garth mentioned that I studied immersion through iterative processes, and coming into this field a little bit from design and the systems engineering, we always called it workflow engineering. And the model that we came up in, we did some primary research with a number of companies, and found that the major differentiator in breakthrough products were the companies that had an immersive discovery engagement model. They literally could tell you it. And if they drew a blank at the beginning of the survey, we went further. But Corning, for example, is a great local company. Did they get this? They could give this presentation because they invested in it, and they understand that the truth is with the customer. That I have to, have an open ear and go out and get information about the tacit knowledge of people in the field and extract that, bring it into my thinking. At the same time, I have to do a bit of immersive push. I got to go meet them, and I got to put, questionnaires in front of them. Often in a design, we would say, the funny thing about design, Steve, is people don't necessarily know how to get what they want. They just know what they don't like, right? And so as designers, many times, we're just in the cockpit serving up variations that might resonate with them. And good designers serve only good variations, so that the choices are, we call it forward constraint design, is designing them in a way that they're all good choices. We're just going to find the one that aligns more with your thinking.
Chris, can I ask you a
Yeah.
question? So since we're at this immersive discovery stage.
Yeah.
And let's say we were talking about this, a degree program.
Yeah.
And you were trying to increase enrollment. What would your or trying to decide if you need to do a degree of redesign?
Yeah.
Right. So what would your steps, you're standing here, you came to health informatics.
Yeah.
What was your immersive discovery? What were the actual activities that you put in?
Yeah. And I'll show you.
Okay.
It's in the deck, but I'll give you a quick answer and then the full answer a little bit later. But it really starts with making certain that I don't get ahead of the process. And so first thing I got to do is go out and meet some people who are informaticists. And then I also have to talk to people who went through our program and see what they like. What was the program all about? What did you walk away with? Are you a happy customer? Then a third component I did is I looked in the industry and said, well, what is a health informatic Matt assists, what's the trajectory for this position? What do these people do, when they get out of here? And do our courses curriculum align with what they need to be productive? And so this is right at the heart of what we're doing. And so countless, I've tens and tens of meetings and scraping information from those meetings before we even put down the first step in terms of a strategy. So the truth is I had to figure a way to move the needle and get my head out of the guillotine before I could do a heavy marketing press, a heavy push. And so I figured some low-hanging fruit on some things that I could do, which I'll show you. And then I'm actually now at a stage where I think I can go more to a automated platform, direct marketing kind of, because I know what the resonating value proposition is now, but it's taken me almost 3 years to figure it out. So, there's a lot to it. When we do, this is kind of how the process starts. So really, Bruce, the remainder of the conversation is a little bit of show and tell of, hey, this is what we did and where we're at. This is, for my colleagues, Kristen and Steve, you guys in the HCC space, this is kind of the domain that you guys are in many times. You're trying to figure out, what are the dynamics of the space? How are people moving through it? You take 4 people, they all end up at the same point at the end, but they have a circuitous route going there. And are there constant, routes that we could follow that we could leverage and make more mainstream? And so this process is tremendously valuable. I found at any point in my career where I'm doing workflow, if I hop on a plane and go to the site and spend time with the people on site, I walk back with a wealth of knowledge, to the point where I've hung cameras off of me and done spaghetti diagrams from just my movement. I said, I'm going to jump in your job jacket. You take me through, whether it's in a telehealth workflow or whatever. And then you go back and spend 2 months digesting all the stuff that you picked up that day that you didn't even notice in walking through. So, you can take it to different degrees, but let's take that little bit of a journey map kind of mess and generalize it. So through my study, through my work, I was able to say, hey, these life cycle stages are really acquisition, introduction, retention, growth, and maturity. Okay. And each one of those is a unique enough stage that I should be able to treat my constituency in a different way at each interval. And, they're kind of logical, right? As we're going to, find a target client, customer, student. Then we're going to make sure that that student has a smooth on-ramp. And when they're on-ramped onto the system, how do we develop a sustaining model to keep them? Retention. And now they're in, how do we change them to be, or motivate them to be a spokesperson for the program where they're carrying the flag and they want to do philanthropic things. They want to do things that, we don't have budget for, but believe me, coming from someone who goes through the program and is working in the field, those testimonials are the ones that put you on the map. And so, we look at content, promotion, and participation. These 3 elements have to be in every communication, because people really want to know what's in it for me. What am I getting out of this? Sometimes it's a t-shirt. We've run programs in College of Art and Design where you get a free t-shirt if you apply. All of a sudden, double applications. They want the t-shirt. Then we had to vet through, but from that, you start to pick up some that have more than that interest. And we're in a content-rich society, so we have to have relevant content. This is why, for me, when I initially spoke with Ann and then with Matt, I said, I want to research in the domain that I'm teaching in. And the health informatics program was one that I could sort of sink my teeth in, do research in the area. But if I publish in the area, I have a little more credibility than I'm just running the program. And so I think the content part of it is important. You have to put a viable content out there, and you have to keep people in the game where they're iterating, where they're feeling like they can talk to you, they can talk to their colleagues. You know, in my classes, I run a Slack channel. I have office hours, but they're somewhat fictitious because I'm a 24/7 with my students. And I just say, hey, you know what? If you have a need, you contact me. If I'm up and around, I'll respond. And the first time I can look at my phone or whatever, my computer, I'll respond back. And this is the way, and I have students at the end say, you know what? This is fantastic. I was working on this code at 11 at night. I didn't even expect you to be awake. And you're sending me notes back, and I fixed the problem and I could sleep better. So I just think that participation extends to peer level too. Students want to be able to. One of our students just this week in scripting course was struggling. I explained it a couple of times to him, probably not as good as he needed to, but he reached out to another student, and the other student helped them solve the problem, which was great. So this is, you know, and if we take this model like a little bit more pictorially, is that at that acquisition stage, what are the print, web, mobile, social kinds of touch points that we need to get someone on this on-ramp? And then what's the profile of the person at that level? And these are kind of like the, you know, the follow the yellow brick road, because what we're doing is we're introducing them to our, acquiring and introducing to our program, but then keeping the storyline going and trying to retain them, you know, establish growth and connect with them into maturity where they become an active alum. So this is kind of saying the same thing I said on the other chart, but just a little bit more visual component to it. So when we looked at the health informatics program, get your question, Bruce, we interviewed alumni, students, industry partners. We had somewhat of a relationship with Rochester Regional, at least on paper, and not even that much paper, right, Betty? A little bit of paper, but thanks to you, we have a lot better paper on that now. And we also associations, right? We figure, well, again, for us to have a program, we've got to be in the mix with people that are in this space. And then we looked at competitive programs. From that, yeah.
Because the reason I asked these questions, because we're in the middle of doing this
Yeah.
for a couple of degrees.
Yeah.
And I don't see in there, so my brain went to what job postings are out there. So that was one of the first things I started thinking about. But I don't see that here in yours. Was that part of the process, or
Yeah.
we borrowed up?
Right. No, industry partner workshops.
Okay.
So who writes the job descriptions?
Yeah.
You know, I'm not going to search through Indeed. I'm going to talk to the people that have the budget and the domain need, and they're going to give me the album version of what they're really looking for. Now, you know, it's fine. I do search for job profiles and job, you know, positions. And in fact, we have a relationship at RIT with a company called Burning Glass. And Burning Glass, through you I think experienced them before, but they run a database service of jobs and job placements and opportunities in the academic space that we fill. Okay. And you can ask them for access to the system, and you can also give them, you know, elaborate search of what you want, and they'll come back and feed the information to you, exactly how many positions are out there. If I can zip ahead, way ahead, it's actually in the backup slides. This slide here is from Burning Glass, and it shows us that the registered nurses and software developers are the two primary candidate folks that end up in the health informatics field from all of the different possible positions, which, you know, kind of helped us understand, well, there's technical people that don't have the domain knowledge, and there's domain people who don't have any technical chops. So how do we build a program that satisfies both? So for certain, Bruce, I would say triangulation is the key there. So we took that life cycle model and redesigned it specifically for health informatics. Changed the labels a little bit so that we could align with what did I really want to drive for the purpose here of this program. And we kind of ended up in the direction of awareness, interest, closure, retention, and growth. They're very closely aligned with those generalized labels, but this allowed us to get a little bit deeper in saying, okay, we've got to identify the target audience. We have to establish a conversation. We have to figure out what's in marketing terms, they call it our resonating value proposition. What's the resonating value proposition of people in this realm that might be looking at spending 2 years of their life and the associated time and money? And then what's the competition? Once we could get through that pass, we would be able to have the conversation of commitment. Okay, would you like to join the program? And you can kind of see when you lay it out this way, how dire straits our health informatics program was in, because we're asking for commitment without even a glass of wine. There was, it's just like, hey, join our program. And so all these things leading up to it is really just building a platform that gives you a credibility, that gives you a rite of passage to have the conversation. And so some of the things we if we looked at our assessment, we had very poor enrollment, on the verge of a program being canceled. So I guess that says something for me. I'm willing to make a career move to go to a program with really, I said, this may get canceled, but see what you can do. And outdated curriculum. We had too many elective. We had a dispersed effort on the tracks. We had really distinct, you go down this track or this track, and maybe not sharing enough common ground. We had no brand to speak of in this domain at RIT or in Rochester or nationally, internationally. We're out of touch with alum completely, out of touch with industry, out of touch with faculty. And so, and it sounds like I'm being harsh on the program, but this is what happens when we had a program, but we didn't bankroll a champion. So many people could champion this program, as you guys are doing with AI. But every day you got to wake up with that fire in your belly, and you got to respond to people. And here we're running a program, and it's kind of like, let's see if anybody comes. And so, just even showing up has changed quite a bit. We started with a little bit of an internal assessment. What do we have in terms of content in our curriculum that's leverageable? Do we have any databases that we can work with to try to reach, the prospective students? And then what were the strengths in terms of our skills in this domain? I would say technically we felt pretty good, but in terms of the domain in health informatics, we're pretty weak. And we realized that this relationship with Rochester Regional was not only important, but it was the lifeline. That if we couldn't leverage that relationship with Rochester Regional, then my recommendations would be just, let's shut down the program and do something else. So that's where the real truth came through in my mind, is that, if local people who have signed up to work with us don't think that this is worth salvaging, then, let's get off that boat. And so, we did the work, and Steve worked with me quite a bit when he stepped down, and Matt took over. Initially, Steve and I were working on this, and then Steve became the chair interim before Ava, and it 100% fell my way, which was a good jump start because I learned a lot about the iSchool through Steve that helped me navigate. And the other great blessing that I had in this is that Matt was a champion of what I was doing at the department level, and then he gets promoted to dean. So he knows the battle that we're fighting here, which will help us, Ava. And what do we have in terms of managing this stuff? Do you have reasonable skills? So some of the B-level work that I won't bear you through in terms of an eye test, but I have active spreadsheets that go through every single stage in this workflow, this life cycle, looking at promotion, content, and participation. What's the message, the media, the timing? What are the objectives? And so there's deeper sort of project meat behind the bone in terms of looking at what do we have in a marketing sense that we could leverage? What are some low-hanging fruit opportunities? And this is how we started to turn the crank. We had to have a few early victories that, how do you maybe pick those when, if you pick the wrong one, you could potentially be one and done. I've taught project planning in the past, so I incorporated just a little bit of project planning into the process. In terms of what were our objectives? So the objective came up with this thought process. I'll play them both out: refine and recruit. So refine the curriculum, but within NISAT, right? Hard rule there is that, we couldn't make so many changes that we then have to go in for a whole program review. So that was a boundary condition. Look at the courses we have, and let's start picking off 2-3 a year and just clean them up, tidy them up, update them. And then let's look at a program to start with from 3 students in 2020 to 6 to 12. Double. And that would put a smile on Matt's face. So I'm like, okay, if I can do this, maybe I have a life. So then we take this life cycle and start playing it through and looking at, okay, what are the things that we have to do to have a campaign and have a communication, a community, preparatory work. What do we do to build awareness, interest, closure, and final retention and growth? And notice the items in orange are the things that I've done. The items in black are the things that are yet to do. And my point here is that it's a work in process, but I don't focus 100% on the front end part of the process. I pick a few things very carefully that will make sense and connect across the entire workflow, entire life cycle, and I do a little bit in all areas. And later I have a graphic that's a door plane. So it's a door plane approach, is that it's the only way you can survive in a program that's potentially on the chopping blocks. If you invest everything in the front end process and it doesn't work, you're literally just done. You pack it up and do something else. So that's my message here, is that sprinkle your resources across the need and get a little epicenter in each aspect of the life cycle. Very important. What are some of the things we did? Well, the basics, the fundamentals. We changed the imagery, changed the content, reworked the website, and sometimes just even learning to do that at RIT isn't of itself a challenge, especially when they're changing the people who develop the website from a external group to an internal group and getting rid of RIT online and kind of changing that environment. I literally had to work with 3 different teams over the last 3 years. Whole new teams just come in. Oh, we're running this now. Okay. Did they brief you? No, nothing. So you start over. But we deliver webinars. The students. So twice a year I do, like many of your programs. I know Eric Golan does it for his program, but we do virtual webinars where students can attend, they record them, and then they get an insight to the program. A couple of years ago, we joined the Health Information and Medical Association, which is a national group with a lot of horsepower in this domain. Syracuse had joined, and so did, I think, Buffalo, UB. We didn't have anything here, so I partnered with the business school, and we kind of went halfers on the program. It's not that much, it was a couple $1,000, but you know, and the long story short on this one is that we formed a great relationship with HIMSS, and we were able to take it a little further this year. I published a couple papers in the last few years in the healthcare domain, which, you know, if you cross domains, it's kind of tough. You know, when I'm publishing in IEEE, and now you got to publish in a health journal, and they're kind of, who are you? And it's a bit of work to just get in that door. But I was lucky I got a paper in there. And Limway and I are beginning work on some exciting new things in the personalized healthcare area. We did some advertising, National Nurses Association, because that seems to be a career trajectory for a nurse that's been in maybe 10 years in the field and wants to upgrade and maybe go to, you know, management, or in some cases, project management. And we've held mixers. So I've had a couple already where we've had students and Rochester Regional together in a mixer event, and you know, a chance to meet people face to face and just socialize. And interesting enough, the Rochester Regional relationship, we've done 2 Imagine RITs together. So and they get the notice just in the last few weeks about Imagine RIT. They're already asking me, what are we going to do this year? So last year we had a classroom on the first floor, and we set up an app that would allow you to come in, and probably HIPAA violation, but we took a risk, and you would identify your health conditions, and we'd have the personal health database visually on the screen. And when you made your update, you could literally see your data being updated to the national database. So it's kind of a cool little thing that people could do. The year before, we did hypertension, blood pressure app that I developed in my PhD research that we ran. People would come in and do blood pressure exams and kind of see graphically how they fit within not only they as a person, but in their, we'll say, their related domain demographic. So we did quite a few things here. We published a brochure that basically is digital, but also print if we need it, that kind of highlights the program in maybe a little more progressive light. On October 2nd, we held the first ever HIMSS event, and this at RIT. And again, we crossed party lines. I went over to Urson Uzun and to Matt Wright and said, hey, you know, can we do a cybersecurity and healthcare event? And at first they're like, I guess. And by the end, they were asking for a chance to speak, because we brought 92 people together. And we had 10 people in the lobby of that center down there paying $1,000 each. We raised $10,000. We paid for the entire thing with a surplus, and gave the $1,500 last week to the College of Health Careers and the Rosa Women's Scholarship Fund. It's not a lot of money, but I'll tell you, the folks in that school now are connected with us in a new way. They really are thinking. We got a note from them already this week that Ava was able to see that they are looking at asking us how we could take our health informatics program and modify it in ways that it's specific to their nurses coming through, that the nurses might stay another year and get the health informatics piece. So don't know quite where that will go, but you can see that we're starting to form a community, right? We're starting to get credibility chops in terms of, we got papers going out, we got events happening. We revised coursework, cleaned up some of the courses, changed the actual final projects, make them on contemporary platforms. One of the projects, the server no longer existed at RIT, so they're trying to run the project, and so we did that type of cleanup. And we also eliminated electives. There's really not electives in the program. It's a cohort program. You hop in and you stay through the program. You can have an elective or two if you have prior experience. As I mentioned, we updated a few other ones. This practice of healthcare, we designed a 3-day on-site immersive where students can come in at the end of their program and spend 3 days at Rochester Regional going through the patient cycle with health informaticists and get a feel firsthand of what their job's all about. And that was hugely successful. Every student in the online program came to Rochester, and that's when we had our first mixer. So, even though it's online, we found a way that we could do that. So what are the results? We went from 6 to 8 to 19, 16 matriculating in the program. So,
Sorry.
Oh.
We're basic, yeah.
oh, I didn't even, okay,
No,
sorry
it's
about
okay.
that.
I mean,
Well, that's the punchline right there.
Okay.
So we're able to, actually move the program to, to grow.
I got a pretty clock, but I have lots more questions for you. I'm way out. You said you changed the website.
Yeah.
Is there one thing that sort of sticks out as, wow, we really had to change that?
The picture. The very first thing, what people see, it had an antiquated picture that, no one could relate to. There was no diversity in it. There was no action-oriented, visual. First thing we did is get that picture off, and and I had people literally say, "Hey, the website looks great. We changed one thing, one thing." Sorry, there's a lot of content here, but the net result is we moved the needle and we live for another day. I guess my funny punchline at the end was the patient is off of life support, somewhat stable, but in guarded condition.
Yes, we'll give.
Hey, thank you.
We did get a couple questions, but we kind of switched them around a little bit.
Yeah.
But I think I'd encourage anyone to reach out if you've got things you want to talk about. You'll hear from me soon.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thanks both for coming. Appreciate it.